So a while back on the Blockbusters show, we talked about the theatrical Richie Rich movie starring Macaulay Culkin, and now we're looking at the straight-to-video sequel that came out, released by Saban Entertainment, called Richie Rich's Christmas Wish.
Ho, ho, ho!
Hey, Santa! Looky here!
Oh, it's Richie Rich's Christmas Wish!
Find out what everyone's favorite rich kid is wishing for.
Richie!
When The Boy with the Toys returns in the sequel to Macaulay Culkin's box office smash.
Precisely, precisely.
It's a brand new holiday movie filled with glorious gadgets and incredible toys.
It's a wishing machine.
Pretty awesome, huh, Cadbury?
Join Richie Rich along with his faithful butler, Cadbury.
Ho, ho, ho.
His pals, Freckles, Pee-wee, Gloria.
Cool!
And his devoted dog, Dollar. Richie Rich's Christmas Wish, coming to video this holiday season from Warner Brothers Family Entertainment.
Merry Christmas, everybody!
Good old Saban Entertainment. If there was a popular kids movie or family movie in the 90s, they were more than happy to make straight-to-video sequels to them. After Richie Rich is blamed for a sleigh crash caused by his mischievous cousin Reggie Van Doe, Richie wishes he didn't exist. When a wishing machine invented by Professor Keenbean hears Richie's wish, it's granted magically, and teleports him to an alternate universe where Reggie is the master of the house. As Richie struggles to return in time to celebrate Christmas, he learns to appreciate his former privileged life. Why is it this had a longer description than Legend of Cirilla? I mean, damn, that was almost as long as the description for Elves. So as a basic sum up, I didn't hate the Richie Rich movie with Macaulay Culkin. It's not a great movie or anything like that. But, I mean, it was just kind of meh. Like, it was certainly not obnoxious, but it also didn't really have a whole lot that stuck out. And it just kind of fell in line with the more mediocre movies that John Hughes had a hand in when it came to his later career, like post Home Alone. Like, it wasn't obnoxious like some of his other creations, like, say, Baby's Day Out, but it didn't really have anything memorable or really anything as good as something like the first two Home Alones. Then you get to something like this. I mean, this is from the same studio that's brought us classic works like Casper, Spirited Beginning, and Addams Family Reunion, and now you get to Richie Rich. They decided to cash in on not just Richie Rich, the success of that movie, but they also decided to cash in on the Christmas season because it's a Christmas-themed movie as well. So here we got Richie Rich's Christmas Wish. The best way I can describe this movie in one sentence is, imagine the Richie Rich movie if it was made for television, and you made it basically every single sitcom episode that parodies It's a Wonderful Life. Because that's pretty much what they do here. They do the thing where the main character does something bad or feels bad about something, and then they say, oh, I wish I was never born, or I wish I never existed. And then through magic, they end up seeing a world where they never existed and everything is so much worse. So that's pretty much what this movie is. But let's talk about some of the key points. Full disclosure, I actually didn't read any Richie Rich comics growing up, so I'm just going off of like some minor research I did while watching the movie and shortly after, and going off of what I can remember from the first movie. But basically, Richie Rich is the richest kid in the world, and he has his token little group of friends who are not the same friends from the first movie, even though the main girl in his group of friends kind of looks like the girl from the first movie. In the first movie, you had like the obligatory 90s group of friends. You had the kid who was radical and wore sunglasses all the time, and you had the token black kid and the token fat kid and the token girl. This time it's whittled down to 3 kids, and they basically have nothing to do, aside from maybe helping out in the third act. But yeah, Richie's having a good time with his friends. They're going... like, they're having like a snowball fight on these like snowmobiles against a green screen, and as you'd expect from Saban Entertainment, the green screen work and the CG is just awesome. Then Richie is called back by Cadbury, who, like a lot of the other people in this movie, looks nothing like he did in the first movie because they didn't even try to get people that look like they did in the first film. He brings them in, they go to see the scientist guy, who again is played by someone else. This time he's played by Eugene Levy, who somehow found a way to actually mask his usual Eugene Levy voice. He has like a goofy lab coat, and of course he has thick glasses, and he honestly feels like it's Eugene Levy trying to channel his inner I don't know, Jerry Lewis? Like he's trying to be Nutty Professor or something?
So anything I wish for will come true.
Precisely, precisely. Yes, 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 yes. Unfortunately, there is one small catch, and that is the MWR only works one day out of the year.
And of course, we get our MacGuffin as he creates a wishing machine, so that's going to come into play. That's what's going to cause the titular Christmas wish. But no time for that. Richie has to go on TV because him and his family are going to be doing some charity to help out the local orphanage. Because just to show that they're rich people, but they also care about others. And they're willing to give away their money, kind of like they did in the first movie. Because they always talk about helping out people who work in their factories, and in this case also helping out people who are less fortunate than them. And then you got obligatory evil relatives who are just stone cold, hard, evil sons of bitches. And in this case you got Richie's cousin, Reggie Van Doe. And he's basically like every person's fantasy of what an evil rich person is like. He, spits on people, talks down to the staff, spits water in someone's face at one point. He's just a horrible little shit. He's jealous of Richie because he gets to go on TV and he's going to be holding this big parade to try and, give away presents to the homeless and stuff like that.
Why does Richie Rich always get to be on TV?
Oh, because his parents are the richest in the world, dear.
I want parents like that.
We're very rich, son.
Not rich enough. I want to be their son.
Don't be too sure.
Just be patient, dear.
I gotta point this out because this blew me away when I looked it up. At some point I started looking at the cast on IMDb and I was going through, I'm like, who the hell are Reggie's parents? And I found out the mom is Marla Maple, also known as one of Donald Trump's ex-wives. What the fuck? As for Richie's parents, I vaguely recognize them. The dad is now played by Martin Mull, who was very funny back in the day. And the mom is played by the brunette from Clue. So, yeah, again, totally different actors, don't really look anything like they did in the first movie. But I was happy to at least recognize them from something. So, yeah, they're the new parents of Richie Rich. Because Macaulay Culkin was off doing other things, this time Richie Rich is played by the same guy that plays Riku in the Kingdom Hearts games. I thought that was interesting. I was like, oh shit, Dave Gallagher is in this? Well, shit. He was honing his craft. He was building a name for himself before he got to the Kingdom Hearts games, I'll tell you what. Reggie ends up finding this remote that's going to control the sleigh thing that they're going to use in the parade. He ends up making Richie crash, and they end up destroying a lot of property around the orphanage, and people are just very upset. Richie feels horrible about what happened, and then he sees Reggie going on TV and just basically bad-mouthing him, saying that, oh, this was intentional, he's a bad kid, I know him personally, he's a horrible person. And now everyone's just going, oh, Richie Rich, what a horrible person, how could he have done such a thing?
Richie Rich did this on purpose. He ran off with their presents just like he ran off with the Salvation Army money. I mean, he's ruined Christmas for everyone.
So, Reggie, you think Richie Rich really is a bad seed? Tell us more.
So Richie feels bad about this. He goes to the wishing machine, and while he's standing around it, he just happens to mutter out how he wishes he was never born. And it obviously works, and he ends up getting sucked into the machine and into another reality where he never existed, and everything is worse off without him. And again, we get to see some awesome green screen work. In this world, you have it that his parents are still together, but they just never had Richie as a son. They're still rich, they just never had Richie as a son. No, instead, Reggie is like their adopted son, I guess, because I think at one point they show Reggie's parents are now stuck working at a museum.
Is it me, or is there something different about this dinosaur?
No, all dinosaurs look the same. Come on, let's go.
That's Mr. and Mrs. Van Doe. That's Reggie's real parents. I guess after Reggie sued them, this was the only job they could get.
Yeah, Reggie is now their adopted son, I guess, and he's like running the companies and making the decisions and calling the shots, and everybody's just too scared to stand up to him for some reason. There was one part where they show a news broadcast that Reggie ends up interrupting, And on the broadcast, they say something about, like, in other news, the president just said, and then it gets cut off. Part of me would have loved if it turned out that in this reality, Reggie became president. That would have been funny. I would have been like, oh shit, wow. They predicted everything.
Tensions rise as the president declares...
Interrupt this program to bring you an important message from me. The criminal who kidnapped my dog is still at large. I am therefore forced to take drastic measures and cancel Christmas unless this so-called Richie Rich is brought to justice.
I don't know, some about that just would have been funny in kind of a, you know, a 2020 kind of sense, but no, he's apparently the new richest kid in the world, basically. Forces the mom to not give any money to these charities and these orphanages, and he's also talking about just, like, he said something about, like, firing or not paying their factory workers, and the parents are obviously against this, but then he just, like, cracks the whip and is like, I call the shots around here, it's about what I want.
Richard.
Yes, sir.
I want you to close the factory tonight. For good. Profit margins are pathetic.
Well, but yeah.
Guys, what's coming?
Bad mood.
Yeah, a really bad move.
I will take care of it, sir.
Meanwhile, Richie ends up refriending his friends because they don't know him in this universe, but they take a liking to him right away. As for some of the other characters, Eugene Levy, scientist, is just kind of trying to stay out of trouble. He's still working on technology, and apparently he was trying to perfect the wishing machine in this universe, but he didn't have his key ingredient, which comes into play later. That's when the friends come out and help. As for the butler, Cadbury, he's still a roadie in this, like, rock band that they have, which they have a throwaway line at the beginning of the movie when they're still in the regular universe, and Richie notices he has, like, a tattoo on his leg, and he's like, oh, I got that when I was a roadie in a band. And so in this universe, apparently that band is still making music, and he's still a roadie. And you can tell it's a different universe because he's wearing a wig that's obviously not real hair.
Oh, yeah. I think we've had the pleasure.
Actually, we have, Richie Rich.
Sorry, don't recall.
The most important part about this other universe is that it's everything outside of, like, the Rich's mansion. Everything is apparently Skid Row now. Everybody is starving in the streets. Everybody is just, you know, wandering the streets aimlessly, begging for money and food.
I don't think we're in Richville anymore.
Part of me was like, okay, so is this just, like, this one town? Or is this the entire country? Because if so, part of me, my mind started wandering, and I'm like, you know, you have some kind of interesting plot to, like, a science fiction novel going on here about some kind of dystopian hellscape. But instead it was remade into a Christmas sequel to the Richie Rich movie with Macaulay Culkin. So Richie befriends the butler, and they have cops chasing after them, and it's because they took the dog Dollar, just like the dog in the first movie. They took the dog, and so now, like, there's, like, wanted posters for Richie all over the town because he's a dog napper. Because, you know, apparently now Dollar belongs to Reggie in this universe. So they're trying to get away. They're dodging these police. And I will say, the one thing that they carried over from some of the weaker John Hughes movies from the later half of his career, they really loved using that trope of kid genius that's able to outsmart stupid adults. Certainly not help with the way they made this movie. I mean, this is, by all sense of the word, a straight-to-video movie. This is a very low production, which I was expecting. I'm like, oh, Saban Entertainment, yeah. Like, from some of the other things that I've seen from them, I was willing to believe that it was going to be a cheap movie. And it is. Sometimes it's cheap in a laughable sense, and you can kind of get some joy out of that. But then there's other times where it's like, okay, that just looks like shit. And one of their staples of their productions is all over this thing, and that is the overacting.
Hey, wait a minute. That's the guy!
Like I said, I mean, I was expecting that from Saban Entertainment. I wasn't, like, surprised by that. I was just kind of like, oh, great, yep, there we go. There's the staple, overacting and mugging. Even down to the camera zoom. They just had to zoom in on that guy's bug-eyed expression like he was, like, trying to imitate a cartoon character. So after Richie somehow convinces Cadbury to be on his side, he just buys right into the whole, like, oh yeah, alternate universe thing. Okay, yeah, you're a kid from another reality, and I'm your butler, and we're, like, best friends. They end up finding Eugene Levy, scientist, who says that he basically has the thing, but he doesn't have the one key ingredient that makes it work, which is a dinosaur wishbone, which they call the world's largest wishbone. So of course that gets it to work. But the only way to get this wishbone is in this museum that's close by. So that's when Richie's friends come in because they see that his wanted posters are all over town, and that was the broadcast that Reggie interrupted earlier. Because Reggie basically just puts the hit out for Richie, so like, you know, this kid can't ruin my Christmas! Richie is public enemy number 1. They have to get this wishbone from the museum, and so Richie's friends from the other reality, who he befriended earlier in this reality, come to help him, and they get the wishbone. They have to sneak into the house, and they have a temporary fight scene between this robot maid, which I had to look that up. When they first show her in the movie, I was like, whoa, what the fuck is this?
Oh dear. Excuse me.
You want me to fix that valve for you?
Would you mind? Thank you, Richie. You're the only one that has the touch.
Then I had to look it up. This is actually a character from the comics, and apparently, like, the animated series. And I guess she's also part of some new Richie Rich sitcom live action show that they're doing somewhere. But yeah, this is actually a character from Richie Rich continuity. I didn't know that. But when they first show her, I was like, whoa, wait, what the fuck? This wasn't in the first movie. And she's in the other reality, and she's evil until eventually Richie shows her kindness and, you know, deactivates her. So, hooray. So they get to the machine after Reggie gets it and has it activated, and he wishes for a bunch of shit. Like, he wishes that he could fly, and then wishes that he was king. And they do have a moment that I kind of liked. And again, I feel like there is a kind of good idea for a movie buried underneath this. But at one point he tells his guards to, like, capture Richie and his friends. It's like, guards, take them away. And the head guard is like, arrest them yourself. I'm not taking orders from you anymore. And part of me just found it funny because I actually had looked up that actor and I was like, he looks familiar. What was he in? So I looked it up, and that guy, his name is Richard Richie. And part of me couldn't help but just think, either he auditioned or somebody in the casting was like, dude, how awesome would it be if we had a guy named Richard Richie in a movie called Richie Rich? That would be awesome. So that part of that was why I kind of like that moment. But of course, at that point, Richie gets the machine working. He gets sucked back into his reality. They have that It's a Wonderful Life moment, you know, oh, you know, I'm back, running happily through the streets. You find out that, you know, everybody was looking for him, and there's like, instead of wanted posters, there's like, have you seen this boy posters all over the town? And everyone's just so gosh darn happy to see Richie again.
We wish you a Merry Christmas. We wish you a Merry Christmas. We wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Good tidings we bring to you and your kin. Good tidings for Christmas and a Happy New Year. We wish you a Merry Christmas. We wish you a Merry Christmas.
Once Richie gets back to his own reality, Reggie is just never mentioned ever again, and I was really confused. I was like, wow, the one thing I was expecting them to do, they didn't do it. That threw me for a loop. So, as if it isn't obvious enough, the first Richie Rich was not a masterpiece by any stretch of the imagination, but this was so much worse. I mean, it's far from the worst thing I've ever sat through for Blockbusters. I mean, it wasn't too horribly long, so that was a plus. It's only about like an hour and 24 minutes, so it was relatively short. But at the same time, I mean, cheap production, which sometimes laughably bad, other times just kind of felt like, okay, that looks terrible. Overacting and mugging, plot cliches, even down to the premise. It's like, oh, it's your garden variety It's a Wonderful Life episode of any given sitcom. Sometimes those are good, and other times it just feels like a cop-out. It's like whenever shows do a Christmas Carol episode. It's like, it's sometimes they can be done really well, and then other times it just feels like, well, they didn't have an idea, so they just went for the easy thing of, oh, let's just parody It's a Wonderful Life or Christmas Carol or The Grinch, because why not? And that's kind of what this movie felt like. Some things made me laugh, though I think most of that was just from, like, unintentional hilarity. Like, I think it was just me trying to look up the actors and being like, oh my god, how did they get Eugene Levy to be in this? What the hell? Or the fact that Richie is played by Riku. That made me laugh. Or the fact that one of Trump's ex-wives is in this movie. That shouldn't have made me laugh, but it did. But yeah, really, this, I don't know. Maybe if you have nostalgic memories for it, maybe it would be entertaining in that regard, but yeah, honestly, I wouldn't recommend it. There's really nothing in this movie that was, like, really worth, like, referencing. It's not so bad it's funny. It's not the worst thing ever. It's just kind of, well, exactly what it is. It's a cheap cash grab trying to bank on both the Christmas season and the fleeting success of the Richie Rich movie with Macaulay Culkin. So, yeah, it's just a straight-to-video sequel to a movie that, I guess, made enough money to warrant making a straight-to-video sequel, but honestly, yeah, there's so many better Christmas movies out there compared to this. It's funny, I remember seeing ads for this movie as a kid in front of Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island on VHS, and as a kid, I probably thought that it looked really cool. Watching it now, I'm just like, yeah, it's another Saban Entertainment production where everything is just cheap and overacted, so in that respect, it did give me exactly what I was expecting. And so that does it for Blockbusters this month and this year. Look forward to more Blockbusters content coming up in 2023. Obviously, we'll be doing more bad movie reviews. Maybe every so often we'll do some so bad they're good movies, or maybe some, forgotten gems or underrated movies. I'm going to try and branch out, do some other things. Going to try and do some TV show reviews, try and review some more shows, because we've been doing those like for the last few years. We did Real Rob last year, and this year we did that George of the Jungle Season 2. Also, one thing I want to do is I want to probably do some game reviews at some point for Blockbusters, maybe. Maybe just like once or twice on and off. It's not going to replace the movie reviews, but just something every once in a great while, try and do like game reviews in this style, in this format for this series. Maybe we can do that. And this is a definite next year. I'm going to try and start doing anime reviews for Blockbusters. So there's plenty of anime that I want to talk about, maybe talk about some manga. Definitely want to try and talk about some stuff like that, because that's something we haven't really talked about on this channel before. We haven't done that many videos on stuff like that. So going to try and bring some new blood to the channel next year. So that's definitely stuff to look forward to next year for Blockbusters show. But until then, guys, I'm Adam Sykes of the Blockbuster Show, and we will see you guys in the next video.
Anytime, Richie. Hey, call us when you're old enough to stay out past 9 o'clock, okay?
Sure.